Trauma is a very bad thing, no matter what it is, whether it's a mass shooting, a sexual assault, whatever it might be.
Hello and welcome to Mirror Talk. We have moments where we just have to pause. Just pause and take a break and reflect on life. Remember, you are strong, you are enough, you are capable, you are blessed, and you are loved. Your moment of greatness starts now.
Today, I am grateful to learn more about PTSD from a sexual assault survivor, a mental health advocate, and a supporter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, whose goal is to reduce the rate of suicide. Thank you for joining me today, Meghan. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So, may I get to know you better? Can you share your story with me?
Absolutely. So I have chronic PTSD from being assaulted multiple times. It's a story that I'm usually quite public about. And I spend all my time advocating for mental health that I can. I do a lot of policy work in Indiana regarding mental health and suicide prevention and advocating for sexual assault survivors almost every moment that I can, every moment that I'm awake.
So can you tell us more about this assault that you've experienced? Is there like a story you could share with us, just to make people out there relate with you a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I was assaulted by a very powerful man in my state. And I was assaulted at the first time at 14. I'm now 22. So it's been 8 years since my first assault. I've been assaulted many times during the ages of 14 to 19. During that time, I was not aware of what was happening. I did not realize until about age 18 that what had happened to me when I was 14 was sexual assault in the state of Indiana. The age of consent is 16. And I did not realize that for the first time until I was 18. I then went through a legal investigation of sorts in my state, and unfortunately, nothing was ever done about my perpetrator. And ever since then, I've been battling PTSD. At first, I felt a little bit of stigma and a little bit of shyness around my diagnosis when I was first diagnosed. When I was about 19 or 20, I was scared. I didn't really know. I thought PTSD was only something that veterans got from being in the military. I was confused. I didn't know. And I never wanted to share my diagnosis, let alone did I know that the next 2 years of my life would be spent to advocating for survivors that have been through traumatic things, such as sexual assault. And so, like I said, I'm very public about my story. I'm very public about my recovery. And I'm grateful for that, even though sometimes it is hard. And I would almost say that almost every day is hard living with PTSD.
Yes. And at the earlier stage of this PTSD for you, did you receive like support from family or loved ones, or could you share it with them?
So my family actually is not very supportive, unfortunately. However, I will say that I do have a roommate and I have a great therapist who is very supportive. And that has been key to my recovery, is having a professional therapist that has been by my side. It's been very hard to find help, unfortunately. And I am very grateful that I have the support I do.
With the therapy and your roommates, your friends, you are able to survive the PTSD.
Yes, it is a challenge, I will say. Some days are more challenging than others, and I don't necessarily have a heads up when I'm going to have a bad mental health day, just like the rest of us. But I will say that through therapy and having my roommate and our dog, I have found a lot of support, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm also grateful that I'm able to share social media and that I do have a lot of followers, and having that support is also key of social media.
Yes. Well, I'm really interested about this. I would love to learn from you about PTSD. What does it mean to you, and what are the symptoms that you experience?
Well, PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And I believe it's only been in the last about 20 years or so that we've diagnosed other people than veterans with it. We diagnose sexual assault survivors with it. We diagnose people that have witnessed, honestly, just horrific events, such as mass shootings with it. The symptoms that I experience are flashbacks, hypervigilance, always being on guard, always being on the lookout that something bad could happen.
Yeah.
I would also say that I've also experienced, not being able to really have a lot of stability. Stability is something that I've struggled with, and having stable relationships, and realizing that there are people that love me, and realizing that there are people that care and want to support me, and they're not bad people. I would also say that sleep disturbances, like I mentioned with flashbacks, are up there. I've also struggled with a little bit of self-harm. And until these past couple months, I've never really struggled with suicidal thoughts. And that was something that I battled about 6 or 8 weeks ago. And thankfully, my therapist and my doctor, we were able to work through that. But there are just some terrible, terrible days where it's easier just to stay in bed, and it's easier to not have hope some days. But I'm grateful that I know that hope exists.
Yes. And I'm so grateful that I'm again you being grateful about all of this. I assume you believe strongly in God, and you believe that He can see you through every day and every bad day that you experience this disorder.
Yes, absolutely. I will say that I was actually talking about this with my roommate last night. Something I found interesting was that a few months ago, my therapist actually noted that gratitude is one of my coping skills, and that I always try to look for the positive side in things, even though sometimes the positive side is really hard to find. But I have found that in most situations, if not every situation, there's always a silver lining. And for me, that's been especially true in my experiences. I've been able to encourage countless survivors. I've been able to share my therapy experiences. I've been able to share and be transparent and really help people understand that healing is not easy, but it is possible.
So apart from having this great or high hope, and also being grateful, and also having a good therapist or a good doctor, what are other ways one can, remain mentally healthy while dealing with PTSD?
Yeah, I would say that honestly, you got to have a lot of coping skills, because when you don't have more than a couple, when you only rely on 5 or 6 people, there are going to be times that those 5 or 6 people are not available, and you have to be able to cope on your own. That is probably the number one thing I've learned. For me, coping looks different almost every day. Sometimes it's going and getting Starbucks. Sometimes it's taking a hot bath. Sometimes it's literally just sitting there and counting to 100 to remind myself that I am safe, I am calm, and I'm going to get through this moment that feels really tough.
And are there things that people misunderstand about PTSD? Like, for someone who has never ever, dealt with this subject before, heard about it, what are the misunderstandings that you hear about PTSD generally?
I think a lot of people forget that people that have PTSD are not weak. It means that we've been through something that we're not supposed to go through. Trauma is not a normal thing. Trauma is not normal to the brain. Trauma is a very bad thing, no matter what it is, whether it's a mass shooting, a sexual assault, whatever it might be. And I think people forget that it's not just veterans, because I still get a lot of looks when I say I have PTSD. A lot of people assume, oh, she was in the military. Well, that's not true. I have never been in the military, and I have PTSD. And I think that that's really the misunderstanding, is that the normal everyday person can have it if they've been through something that is traumatic. And that looks different for all of us. It's not what's traumatic for me may not be traumatic for someone else, and that's fine. But that's the biggest misunderstanding.
Apart from everything you've been saying, apart from everything I've learned from you now, what else can one do to remain healthy? Like, apart from taking a warm bath, or for someone who, for example, is scared of going outside, or for someone who is scared of talking to other people, are there like some personal things that one can do, other things that one can personally do to avoid or to deal with PTSD?
Absolutely. I think I will say that I understand that some people are scared to talk to others, and I understand that. I was too. I was that person. I will say that reaching out and finding support has been key. Realizing that I needed to be on medicine, and realizing that I'm okay that I take an antidepressant every day. And being able to say that and being able to share that, it's taken a lot for me to get there. But I'm so glad I reached out. I'm glad that I have a really good therapist that I meet with regularly. Sometimes I will say that therapy sessions are hard. People think that therapy is all about being easy. It's not, and it's hard. And there will be days that you want to quit, because I've had plenty of those. To me, that just means that you found a good therapist. But I think that if you need to take the first step, I think the first step is just realizing that wherever you are and being able to, have a safe place, I think is key. I don't think healing can start until there is a safe place. And I think for those that need to start somewhere, I think the safe place is a great place. But I really think the key is reaching out and not suffering in silence, because this will haunt you and it will not go away. I tried. I wanted it to go away. I never wanted to deal with this. I never wanted to say that I go to therapy almost 3 times weekly. I never wanted to be that person. But I've learned that it's okay. And just because you go to therapy now doesn't mean you have to be in it for years. But I think reaching out is really, really key.
Yeah. Yes, I also believe that. And do you think, this question is popping in my mind, do you believe there's like an end to it? Is there a time, maybe after 10 years, after 20 years, you say, oh, yes, I've overcome PTSD. Now I'm free from it. Now it's like in the past. Is it possible, or is the journey one has to continue to the end of this?
I think, honestly, it's different for every person. I don't think there's a set end date. I will say with antidepressants, you have to taper off them slowly, depending on the dosage. So, I mean, that's a little bit of time, maybe 6 or 8 weeks. But honestly, I would say that it looks different for everyone. I am almost certain that someone that's been through only one traumatic event probably will not be in therapy as long as someone that has been through a chronic history of events. And that's not to say that anyone's trauma is lesser than others. But I think looking at a timeline, it's hard to say, because I think it really is different for everyone. I think that my level of therapy, my intensity level, and how much I go is different than what someone else's might be. And I think it all goes back to being able to afford therapy. It all goes back to having a therapist that has availability. And it goes back to finding the good fit with a therapist. So I really think that everyone's timeline looks different. And I encourage everyone to talk about that with your providers. I never thought I'd be on medicine a year and a half later, but I've realized that I need it, and it's what helps me get through the day, and I'm not going to sit and suffer. And so I'm fine. If I have to take a pill every day, oh well, it's one pill. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. And are there means or ways of tracking one's progress, or is there progress at all?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that, when you have a reduction in symptoms, that is one key that things are working. And something I recommend to people I talk to, if they're going to therapy twice a week, cut down to once a week, then cut down to once every 2 weeks, then go once a month. I never recommend stopping things cold turkey. I think that's a recipe for disaster, regardless of medication or therapy. I think that if you're getting to a good point where you can, deal with these things on your own, your flashbacks are reduced, you're not as anxious about the traumatic event anymore. And then start having that conversation with your provider about, okay, we've gotten to a good point. Let's talk about cutting down these sessions. And like I said, maybe that's once a week. Maybe that's going down to twice a week, whatever it might be.
You sound to me like someone who takes, you sound to me like someone who places a very high priority on your mental health.
Yes.
Yes. And I would love to ask, is there like days or weeks or moments that you feel down, or you feel like, wow, I'm in the cold? And the question actually is, how do you come out of this situation and say, and bounce back and say, my mental health is my highest priority. I have to feel I'm going to be happy, I'm going to be strong, I'm going to pull through.
Absolutely. I think people that have PTSD, I think we have an over resiliency. I know for me, my therapist has said that I'm the most resilient person he's met. And I wear that with a badge of pride most days. But I will say, I think that comes at a cost. I think that we have to have the days where we're not okay. I think we have to have the places where we can let our emotions out, because I think for me, PTSD is really about times that we were too strong and we had to be strong to get through the moment, but then we have to not be strong to work through those moments. I know for me, a safe place is in my therapy sessions. I can do whatever I want. I can cry, I can laugh, I can do whatever I want. It's a place to not be okay, and I'm thankful for that.
Great. That's great. So yeah, having a safe place is actually very important. And as you have understood from you, it is okay not to be okay. On some days, it's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely. And coming out of those days, it's hard. I recently have went through a really tough bout in my therapy. It's just we've had some tough issues, and I've had to remind myself that at the end of the day, it's not about, moving mountains in session. Sometimes it's about just getting through the session or just getting through the day, because we're going to all have tough days, and we just have to get through them and just hang in there as best as we can.
As a mental health advocate, what are the measures, what are the things that you are passionate about or doing for other people to improve their mental health?
Absolutely. Well, I think for me, one area has been social media. I share a lot of my story there. I share a lot of my struggles, and I also share a lot of the good things that happen there. I think being open, I think that's a different thing. I don't think a lot of people are open on social media about their struggles. And I think for me, that's proven to be the number one way to make a difference. I think that that pushing for different laws at the state level, I've been very blessed, and I have that experience. I've been able to work with quite a few different nonprofits in the area to work on mental health legislation. I'm one of those that I don't believe that more laws are a good thing necessarily, but I think that anything we can do to raise awareness is a good thing about mental health.
So you're using your platform, your social media platform, to ensure that every other person hears about your story and also could feel like involved or important, and also improve their mental health in a way or two possible from your story.
Absolutely.
Earlier you mentioned self-harm, and I'd love you to talk to me about this.
I went through kind of a dark period in the last couple of weeks, and it was one that I didn't really see coming. It was brought on by a lot of different life circumstances, and I'm very grateful that my therapist was working hand in hand, and we were constantly, talking about it. We were talking about things to do in a crisis, and that conversation was hard to have. But I'm grateful that we had it, and I'm ultimately grateful that I had a team of professionals around me almost constantly that was helping me adjust medication or whatever it might be. And I really feel like that's how I got through the tough phase of I didn't want to live anymore. I went through this really tough part. And so I think it was just having my doctor and my therapist and knowing that at the end of the day, we're all working hand in hand for the betterment of myself.
That's good. I mean, one thing I've gotten from you now is having a strong support system. It's very important. It's very vital.
Absolutely. And I will say that, it is hard. It is hard to be open with everyone. When I was having suicidal thoughts, I was like, I'm the mental health advocate. I'm not supposed to have these thoughts. And I went through that. I struggled for a little while without telling anyone. And I finally got to a point where I was like, I need to take my own advice and talk to someone and say, hey, I'm struggling. And this has been going on for a couple of weeks. What can we do different to not have me struggling so much?
Yeah. And you got the help from the doctors.
Absolutely. And my therapist, everyone really worked hand in hand. I never really felt alone throughout the whole thing. I felt like everyone on my team was there to help me and support me. And my roommate was supportive. We came up with a couple safety plans. Yeah.
So you mentioned safety plans. What kind of safety plans did you come up with?
Absolutely. So my therapist and I came up with a list of safe places, safe people to call in a moment of crisis. We also took sharp things out of our apartment for a while. Again, and all of this was really a pride thing. It was hard for me to adjust. It was hard to know that we had to take steps. And some of them were that I didn't have control of my medication. Some of them was that we didn't have sharp things around. I made sure that whenever I had an urge to self-harm or whatever it might be, that I talked with my roommate and let her know, hey, I'm struggling. Can you distract me? Or can you help me figure out something to distract me for the next 15 or 20 minutes so I don't do this?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's all about just getting through the moment. I think sometimes we worry about getting through the day. Well, you have to get through the next minute first. And then once you get through the first minute, you can get through the next minute. And sometimes it's just taking it minute by minute by minute.
So on your Twitter page, I found this American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Can you tell me more about this and what are you doing to support this foundation?
Absolutely. So I do my best to support any mental health organization out there, but specifically for American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It's a cause that has hit close to home this year. I've had several colleagues that have committed suicide. And I've had several friends that have also committed suicide, mostly due to the pandemic and the stress of that. And so this year it's hit, like I said, a little bit closer to home. I've spent some time writing some policy for them. I've also spent some time fundraising for their walk that was in my state. It was virtual, but I feel like they have a really good foundation of resources, and especially for those of us that have lost loved ones due to suicide, they have some really great resources in connecting and material just to get through those really challenging times of losing a loved one due to this awful thing.
So you mentioned of losing people to suicide. You had personal experiences with this, right? Friends or loved ones that you lost to suicide.
Yes.
And hope that did not affect you in any way, like to pull you back in your journey of recovery.
Sometimes it's hard when I struggle because I'm like, I just criticize so-and-so for committing suicide, but I have started to understand the struggle again firsthand through my own struggles the past about 8 weeks.
Are there like support systems or support communities for people with PTSD or people that are struggling with PTSD, and also for suicide survivors? Are there like set up plans or set up systems for them? And if not, what do you think can be done to support them in the daily minute-to-minute struggle?
Absolutely. Well, I think the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has some great resources for those struggling. I am not aware of that many PTSD resources. I will say I think the Veteran Affairs, the VA, has some great resources. But as far as support groups go, I think those are a lot harder to find, unfortunately. However, I would encourage anyone to simply just Google PTSD support groups in their area or survivors of suicide loss. And like I said, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has some great links for those that are survivors of those who have committed suicide.
And I'm also very grateful that you're making use of your platform to create awareness about this, about PTSD, talking about your story, talking about the assault that you went through, and also being active in the community of mental health improvement. That's very good. That's very impressive.
Absolutely, thank you.
So this podcast is like a self-improvement, personal development podcast, and we always talk about reflections, and because like a mirror, you can reflect through a physical mirror or through other means, through other objects. So are there like means or ways you reflect on your journey of life so far, or on your story or things that you've gone through? Are there ways you reflect on them and ways you try to improve yourself?
Absolutely. Well, I will say that as I reflect, I'm very proud of how far I've come. It's not been an easy journey. And for anyone out there that is trying to heal, it won't be an easy journey, but it is possible.
That's good. Thanks for the encouragement. It is possible to overcome any situation.
Absolutely.
So where can we stay in touch with you? Like, if there's anyone out there who would love to contact you or write to you, can you make mention of your website or your Twitter handle so that anyone can get across to you and maybe message you and you could help the person one way or the other?
Absolutely. I have a public Twitter account. It is Meghan Stoner, IN. I also am on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram at @themeg16.
At the Meg16. Okay, all this information will be placed in the show notes, and then anyone who is interested could get across to you, and hopefully you could help with any situation, mental health or PTSD or any story, in any means or ways possible. That would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I really appreciate this.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I am eternally grateful for your time, your love, and contributions. You mean a lot to me. Thank you once again for listening and sharing with your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe and follow this journey on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms in the description. Stay blessed.